Welcome back to the Stat Connect. And as always, we are so grateful to be powered by the Crimson Collective. And we are really excited to talk about last week's game against USC. I think caught a lot of people by surprise. I know it did for all of us. We all were hesitant to select the Utes, so we're very excited to talk about that game. And then we've got a lot to look forward to and a lot to talk about with this upcoming huge game against Oregon. So, Joe, why don't you kick us off? What were your thoughts on that USC game? What happened?
Yeah, I mean, surprise is right. I'm not right every time, but in sort of my line of work, you don't actually want to be right all the time. You want to be wrong in the same way in both directions on a consistent basis. Um, I felt really good about my picks coming into this week. This was the first game that watching it, I felt like I was wrong about the team, or that there was something that I didn't understand about the team, and they looked a little bit different. And I remember specifically last week, I said, look, we've had the Utes have had quarterbacks with low usage rates, really high efficiencies. I pointed to Tyler Huntley's performances as an example, and said we're not seeing that from Barnes. We're seeing low usage and low efficiency, and I don't know if he's capable of that. Well, last week, 61%, over 10 yards per attempt, 3 TDs to 1 interception. That's exactly the kind of compact performance that Utah quarterback needs to have. And I think Huntley is a great example of showing how that can open everything up enough for the rest of the team to be really, really effective. I mean, if you're looking at it, I think you really got to lay most of it at the feet of Sione Vaki. I'm just blown away by his performance. I'm still, close my eyes, I can still see him juking that poor kid out of his socks to get that touchdown. I mean, just moves with tremendous speed and field vision and really changes the game. I'm trying to make comparisons or think about sort of Utes, and I think the role that he fills is maybe Covey or Keithy is maybe the way to kind of think about him. He's not stretching the field from a sort of outrunning quarterback sort of perspective, but he's creating, and his mobility creates downfield threats and forces safeties to drop back and those kinds of things. I'm not enough of an expert to know if that's really what opened it up for Barnes and has enabled him to get that kind of high efficiency performance that we need, or if it really, the other thing that you've got to remember is that USC defense, big holes in that backfield, big flaws in that defense, especially on the Barnes runs. You would see him just get loose, and there just wasn't anybody in town. Everybody was doing their own thing. It didn't seem like they had a strategy for hockey. It didn't seem like they had a strategy for quarterback runs. They didn't implement anything at halftime, and those things combined to just not give them a good answer to Utes offense down the stretch, and they were able to get the ball to exactly where they needed to get it to come away with that win.
Well, that's what really shocked me, because I was saying I got to think USC is going to make some plans for Sione Vaki. And so I didn't think he'd be able to replicate the game that he had.
I made some plans for him, but you better believe Oregon is putting in some big nights.
The plan that it appeared they made was, let's put a freshman linebacker on him all game long. We're going to put a freshman linebacker to cover him all game long. And he blew him apart with a minute into the game. It's a minute 16. He runs past that linebacker, and they leave that guy on him the rest of the game. He's in single coverage on him out of the backfield the rest of the game.
No adjustments. And I like that comparison that you made, Joe, of Covey, because he does remind me of Covey in his shiftiness, but he's a bigger, stronger, faster Britton Covey. And, I know it's only been 2 games, but the kinds of numbers he's putting up, it's a lot like what Reggie Bush was doing. I'm not saying at all that Sione Vaki is Reggie Bush, but just the way that the Utes are able to use him. And I guess that was one wrinkle that they threw in there, was that little swing route, passing route. They didn't use that against Cal. And so I think that caught USC off guard, but they just kept going to it, and it still worked anyway because they didn't make adjustments. So that was so fun to see.
Yeah, is super efficient. I like the touchdown rate stat for players like this. He's scoring a touchdown on 13% of his touches. Best running back in the country, arguably, would be the Michigan guy's name I can't remember. He's at about 11%. I'd say Vaki's more being used in like a tight end fullback sort of role. But I mean, you're trying to sort of find a comparable to what he's done. It's just so soon. We don't have a ton of 33, I think, snaps. So or 33 action plays, I should say. So we don't have a ton of information yet. We need to see what happens when defenses start keying it on him against double teams. But yeah, early returns. I don't know. The other name that popped into my head when I was watching him was Christian McCaffrey.
McCaffrey, yeah.
Yeah, it's a very similar kind of game.
Utilized him, and part of me said, well, can Vaki field the punt? Because that might be a good place for him too, because he sure is hard to bring down once he gets out in the open field. And I agree that the size coupled with all of that speed and agility has made him really, really difficult. That's why I was thinking Keithy, although obviously not exactly like those players physically, not exactly like those players in terms of position or role. But I think the plays that he's making and the ways that he's changing how the defense has to account for Utah's talent are similar to those guys.
Yeah.
So we got to talk about
absolutely.
We got to talk about the announcement that Whittingham made too, though, of Rising officially being out, Keithy officially being out, and possibly, I mean, that one we've kind of lived with, but now also adding on Lander Barton out for the whole season. The hits just keep coming, and Dustin, I really wonder, how is this how do you see this impacting the Utes moving forward, not having Barton? And I think we've already seen what it's like not having Rising and Keithy, but losing that key defensive playmaker, one of Utah's best. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, so luckily, and I say this with all due respect, because Lander Barton is, I will tell you, he is, I think, the second highest rated defensive player for Utah. So by PFF. I mean, it's not, this is a massive loss for the team. I'm going to tell you right now. He's second behind Ellis.
That's a big hit.
So it's a big hit. However, if there is a position right this second, in this moment, this week, that Utah can lose, it's a linebacker. Because they've got Levani Damuni, who is also, PFF loves him. He's 6th on the list. He has a ton of experience. He plays very, focused. He's not Lander. And, missing out on Barton is disappointing for a variety of reasons. A big one being that Lander's he's a hero. I mean, the team loves him. The fans love him. It sucks to lose another player to injury. And I've said this on the board, and I've said this on Twitter. This is, and, I think I saw a post from Joe on the same space. There might be a reason behind these injuries. I suspect this is a bad statistical year. And everyone's like, it's impossible. This can't just be bad luck. It absolutely can just be bad luck. Every once in a while, you get one team that has no injuries. And we had a year like that. 04 was like that. Nobody got hurt in 04. And then you have a year where half the team gets hurt. And that's this year. And I don't know, right? We're not in the locker room. So I don't know. There might be a conditioning, equipment reasoning for these, but the injuries are so varied, right?
Well, I mean, the two main injuries that we've been talking about all season with Keithy and Rising,
those are last year's.
Those are from last year. They're
Right.
challenging recoveries to ligament injuries, which take forever to recover from, tons of surgeries. Yep. I've definitely
so's
thought
Jackson's too,
and I think it's worth asking the question. But Utah's practice field is grass, not turf. Like turf is sort of when you're saying something is causing these injuries. Usually, what you're talking about, right, is a really hard playing or practice surface, and the Utes do play on turf a lot, but because they practice on grass, which is a much softer surface, I don't think that's in there. And their strength and conditioning team is fantastic and has a really reputation, hasn't had big change. So I stuff happens, right? We'll use the PG version. And it's just one of those seasons. And a huge part, like if you look down the list every year, you say, all right, well, these 20 teams, any one of these 20 could wind up being the best team this year, could make the playoffs. It's the one that doesn't get the injuries that tend to rise above. And it's just chaos. It's part of the very, very chaotic sport of college football. And it really stinks to be on the losing end of it for sure. But I don't think there's anybody to lay blame at their feet. It's just a tough season, and you gotta say there's always next year, because there's always next year.
Yeah. Well, and I put this on the board today too, but next year's team, and we have no idea who's leaving early, right? And we don't know what the NCAA is going to do with medical redshirts. There are some of those players who may not come back, but if everybody comes back who has the opportunity, and the NCAA gives everybody the opportunity to come back, we lose no starters outside of Broughton and Battle. Right?
That's incredible.
We lose 2 corners, and we have 3 superstar freshman corners, and Vaughn is quickly becoming PFF's favorite corner. So really what we need to replace is 1 cornerback if everybody comes back. That's a team that is absolutely built for the college football playoff. But it's also a team full of players who were thinking about leaving last year and now got hurt again and maybe aren't going to come back. But it is a team that is very set up for success, particularly considering how good of a job Whittingham has done. 5-1, 6-1 is probably what most of us expected at this point.
And that's a good way to keep your players too from transferring. A year like this, where
games,
you have these injuries, you might have guys say, you know what, it didn't end up being a great year, I'm ready to go. So what do we think about Oregon?
Speaking of winning games, they win another one here.
So the USC game was similar to the Cal game for me in that it solidified my expectations of the offense. USC's defense is bad. The individually players are good, but the defense as a scheme, as a whole, is bad. So the offense did great. This is Utah's best offensive performance. Points-wise, it's tied for first. Yards-wise, it's first against an FBS team. So the offense did what I should have expected. The defense is better than I expected. The defense held USC essentially, I would say, to 20 points. The pick six isn't their fault, and I don't really think that last touchdown is their fault either. You give up a 60-yard punt return and put them on the 20, you're going to give up points in that scenario to a team like USC.
Yep.
But so the defense is better than I expected. The problem when it comes to Oregon is good on both sides of the ball. They are in the top 30 offensive and defensive plays. However, their only tough game so far, their only tough opponent so far really has been Washington, and they lost. Similar to USC, right? Only tough opponent for USC was Notre Dame, and they lost. So Oregon did a better job sort of comparatively at containing good offenses. The Colorado, they shoved them down 7 points. But they did lose to Washington, which is the toughest opponent by far that they faced. The problem is that Utah's not built like Washington. Utah's the exact opposite of Washington. Washington's defense is terrible. Next week, I think I will have a better, more optimistic view because Washington's defense is not good.
No.
But their offense is very good, and they outscored Oregon. Utah can't do that. But Utah wants to win. They've got to win like they did against USC, play good defense, and then not turn the ball over. Luckily, Oregon gets no turnovers. They're terrible at turnovers, but they don't turn the ball over. So their turnover margin is 0 because they have given it away once and taken it away once, which is an insane stat. Through 7 games, 1 turnover and 1 forced turnover.
It's definitely the most complete team Utah has faced. I think arguably a better offense than USC fielded, or at least a more consistent, more efficient offense than USC has fielded. And a really strong defense, not a world-beating defense, but really strong, not easy to play against. Like I said before, they're going to have a strategy, they're going to have an approach, they're going to make adjustments, all things that we didn't see watching Utah and USC, and that we don't know if Barnes is able to adjust and kind of make the changes that he needs to make. The thing that really stood out for me looking at Oregon's stats is offensive line indicators are just absolutely through the roof. So they're first in the nation in yards per carry. They've got a really good running back, but you don't sort of think of their running back as being the be all end all of running backs, and is not the most explosive, which tells me that a lot of that efficiency is happening really close to line of scrimmage, which points to the offensive line as the source of that. Then we've also got second in the country in sacks per game allowed, seventh in the country in tackles for a loss per game allowed. Everything suggests that just that offensive line is going to be really, really hard to beat.
They give up about a half a sack a game.
Right. Utah is going to have, despite as good as they are at this stuff, they're going to have trouble getting in that backfield, disrupting Oregon, taking Oregon off script. And I was surprised, and when I said last week, I was saying, you're going to have to sack USC 5, 6, 7 times in order to win this game. They only got 3 sacks, which is perfectly respectable, but not.
They got a lot of pressure.
Right. And I bet their scores, the D-line scores, are really good because they really knocked Williams off of his game for sure. But in this game, it's not really reasonable to expect quite that consistent presence in the backfield, disrupting the offensive strategy of Oregon. They're going to do what they want to do, and they're going to probably score a lot of points doing it. And the question is, can Utah keep up? They're going to have to score 30 plus, I think, to win this game. And two weeks in a row. For me, it's all about, I want to look at the whole season, right? Last week was exciting. Utah played exceptionally well. Best performance by far for Bryson Barnes. Probably the best game of his whole life. It was probably the best he was seeing a defense, the most engaged, the best preparation,
It's his best QBR for sure.
Bryson Barnes, player of the week. Who would have
throwing a ball with his dad in the backyard and trading pads.
I will put a caveat. It's his best QBR since the Ohio State Rose Bowl, where he went 2 for 2 for a touchdown.
Well, yeah.
That QBR is like 700 or something insane, but yes.
But what that tells me is that was a great performance, but it's also way over here on your bell curve. And we know what way over here on the bell curve looks like too, like that Baylor game against a bad defense, unable to make anything happen, unable to find open receivers, throwing guys out of being open, behind, ahead, hitting the dirt. Lots and lots of problems with passing accuracy and decision making, and we have to expect that to come back in. We can't expect the very best Bryson Barnes every single week. And I mean, you can see if you look at my numbers. I just don't see them scoring a lot of points this week. I think that they're really gonna be stifled. A decent chance. I got a decent chance of them beating this +7 line that they're on. A lot of that has to do with being at home, but losing 2/3 of the time. This is a really, really hard game to win, even at home, even with all this pressure. College game day in town, the whole 9 yards. But Oregon's going to be up for it just as much. Their season is, I would say, more on the line than Utah. Utah doesn't feel like a playoff team this year. They certainly could win the Pac-12 championship if all the chips fall right, but you look down their schedule, and they're probably not going to be the Pac-12 champions this year. They're if they do get to the playoff, it's going to be. I'd be really hard pressed to pick them, to even come close to beating Alabama or Texas or Ohio State this season with the team that they've got. So given all of that, there's almost more on the line for the Ducks because they've already lost the one that they can afford to lose. And I think they're going to come in strong and play their absolute best. And I think they are going to come away with a win. I'll probably pick 28-23, I think. So I do think Utah will beat that spread and come in under there. But I think we'll be in the same position. You'll see the Utes down, 4, 5, 6 points there at the end of the game. They'll get the ball back. They'll have the opportunity to score. But unlike last time, it won't be against USC's defense. And unlike last time, a run to the 27-yard line for a chip shot field goal is not going to be enough. And between those two things, I don't see them closing the deal and getting this one.
All right. No, I have to completely disagree. I think it's a
mirage. Where we have you, Matt?
It's a mirage, you guys. Oregon has not played good defenses at all. And their numbers are so inflated. I mean, I guess I don't know for sure because they haven't played a good defense, but I think especially Oregon's offense, they haven't proven anything. Now, the defense has had to play 3 of the top pass defenses in the nation, the secondary, but they haven't had to face any good rush offense at all. They've played, 5 of the 6 teams that Oregon's played are ranked 83 or worse in total yards allowed per game. 83 or worse. Their offensive line has really good numbers, but it's because they're not playing teams with pass rushes. They lost 4 offensive line starters from last year's team that were 3-year starters, all of them. And they only had 1 returning full-time starter. And so this line is really pieced together. They brought in a guy from Rhode Island. They brought up a couple guys that had injury histories that, were kind of second, tier guys. It's a mirage. They've been playing just this weak schedule. And I think it's going to be exposed this week. Another thing to look at, of the 6 teams the Ducks have played, 4 have a rush offense ranked 116 or worse in the nation in rushing yards per game. These are horrible rushing teams. And so, yeah, I mean, people will say, well, hey, they hung around with Washington, only lost to Washington by 3. Well, yeah, I'm not gonna argue that Oregon doesn't have a good pass defense, but even Washington, who's one of the worst rushing offenses, they had their running back, what's his name? Can't think of it right now, but he even got 100 yards rushing against them. So I see this as a game where Utah is going to be able to keep using Vaki, and if Oregon's going to make adjustments for Vaki, well then Jaquindon Jackson will keep going. I mean, Jaquindon Jackson quietly had this huge game against USC as well, went over 100 yards, and it's just so much was on Vaki. But I think Utah is going to be able to run for over 200 yards on Oregon, and that's where they're going to get most of the offense. They're going to be having to focus in on that run game, and so hopefully, even if Bryson Barnes just plays an okay game and doesn't turn the ball over, I think Utah's defense is going to be better. I looked at that Texas Tech
from your lips, Matt. It's a
mirage.
Very optimistic, but I always appreciate your outlook.
I mean, look how good Colorado looked at the beginning of the year when they're playing these weak defenses. It's like, wow, this offense is incredible. And then they start playing some good defenses, and it's like, oh, these guys aren't that good. I think that could be the case with Oregon. I'm looking at the personnel. And the personnel on this year's Oregon's team is not as good as the personnel on last year's Oregon team.
What's your score then?
I think Utah's going to win this 28-20.
Whoa.
I'm going way against the spread.
Crazy graphic, 28-20.
I
really do. I think.
Dustin, are you going to split the difference here? I am,
and I know I do that a lot.
That's 13. That's 2 touchdowns.
Here's the thing. I agree with Matt that Oregon's offense is not as good as they seem to be, right? They are, Joseph, you were giving some of the numbers here, but Oregon they're 5th on 3rd down. They're 8th in passing. They're 4th in passing efficiency. They don't give up sacks. They're 6th in rushing, 2nd total offense, 2nd scoring offense, and have 1 turnover, not per game, per the year, right? That offense is very good, but Matt's right. There's not a defense on that list. The closest thing they've played to a halfway good defense is Texas Tech. They're 60th, give or take. Everyone else is terrible. Everyone else is Stanford, 80s, Washington, 80s, Colorado, dead last.
Dead last.
Colorado is the worst defense in the country statistically.
Hawaii's up there as
and
one of the
Hawaii,
worst.
in the hundreds. So I don't think the offense is as good as they have looked, and they are now facing one of the top probably 10 defenses in the country.
And they're doing it in a place where the opposing team, Utah, has won 27 straight games when you throw out that COVID season. 27.
However,
so persuasive. This is why I like it.
However, Utah has been terrible when they face a good defense, and Oregon is a good defense.
I don't know. I don't know that they are.
They're not a bad defense. They're not a USC or a Colorado or a Cal. They're at least an Oregon State, middle of the road, mid-50s defense. And statistically, they're a 30s defense, right? They're an Oregon State. They're not a UCLA. They're not a top 5, top 10 defense. But they're an Oregon State. And they play offense. So, yes, the game's at home, so I don't think we'll get blown out by 14. But I think this Oregon is Oregon State, but slightly better at just about everything. And we saw what the team looks like against Oregon State. So I think I think they're better at home. I think the team's Vaki is a big boost. And just the confidence that you get from beating USC by outscoring them is how it feels to the team, right? The offense put up good numbers, points and yards. So I think they'll feel better, but I still think it's a loss. But I think it's a close one. I think it's probably, like I said, I don't think the offense is as good as they think they are. So I think it's probably 28-24, 27-24. I think Utah covers, but I couldn't pick them to win. If I had to put money on it, I'd put it on Utah to cover, but Oregon to win.
I love it. I love it because
that's good. We're the bell curve as well.
We're all over the spectrum. But and this is one of those games. I love stats, but this is one of the games where I don't trust any of Oregon's stats this year because they played such bad teams. It's like if Utah played against Corner Canyon, yeah, their stats would be pretty good, wouldn't it? So
that's why they play the games, right? Where
that is.
See, and it's definitely a show me game, right? It's great game days here because we're gonna learn.
Yeah,
we're gonna learn. Sione Vaki, is he the truth, or has he been picking on some weak defenses? Oregon, are they the truth, or have they been picking on some weak defenses? And is it all true, or it's going to be exciting? I do think it's going to be close and entertaining and a good time. Even if I don't think they're going to come out ahead, but I can't wait, and I'm really looking forward to it, and looking forward to seeing you guys again next week.
Yeah, for sure. This is great. I'm excited to talk next week on Halloween, and you guys are going to have to find some kind of gift or something when Utah pulls this off. Puts them in the driver's seat.
I'll come up with something. I don't know what, but it'll be delightful.
All right, always good talking with you guys. We'll see you again next week. Thanks.
See ya.